I have to say that this story contains so many details, even more incredible and questionable than usual, that I immediately rejected the idea of making a video from it. Then later I thought, why not work on this case? After all, it is just one UFO story among many others, even if it is not at all ordinary. Well, when we think of an alien spaceship, we inevitably think of saucer-shaped vehicles that are always large enough to comfortably accommodate several alien beings. This is the general picture. But more than 50 years ago, in Japan, children and later their parents came into contact with a miniature UFO in a way that had never been seen before or since. It was such a case that was not widely talked about even in its origin, Japan, until the early 2000s, when it was retold in a UFO magazine in comic book form. Strangely enough, it took this for the case to be reopened and investigated more thoroughly. Before I continue, I would ask you, if you liked the content, to like the video and support my channel by subscribing. Thank you. The 25th of August, 1972, Japan, Kochi Prefecture, Kera. Our story begins on a warm Friday in August, near the end of the summer holidays. 13-year-old Michio Seo was walking home when, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed something amazing. A silvery, metallic-looking, hat-shaped object flying over a nearby rice field. The boy was astonished to see the mysterious object zigzagging in the distance, whose movement he later described as like a bat chasing insects in flight. Seo decided to take a closer look at the mysterious object, so he started to approach it. But his curiosity quickly turned to horror when the UFO glowed blue and shot a beam of light at the surprised boy, who decided to stop provoking the object and ran home. After telling 4 of his best friends, Hiroshi Mori, Yasuo Fujimoto, Katsuoka Kojima, and a boy known only as Yuri, about the incredible encounter, they believed the story and didn't, so they went back to the scene together. Although there was no sign of the UFO, after an hour of searching and waiting, the miniature UFO appeared just 18 to 20 meters above the rice field. The strange object began to emit a pulsating, multicolored light. The boys tried to capture it again, but as they approached, it suddenly started to emit a deafening click-like sound and began to glow in a bluish tone. The boys didn't dare attempt to capture the object any further, and they all ran away. They returned several times over the next week, but the next time they saw it was almost a week later, at around 9:30 in the evening of the 4th of September. Then the tables turned, and this time the UFO approached them, which again resulted in the boys getting scared and running home. They returned only 2 days later to the rice field, but this time they took a camera with them. Once again they were lucky and soon spotted the object lying in a field next to the road leading to the rice field. They cautiously approached the object, but before they got too close, they allegedly took this picture of it. As soon as the flash flashed, the object resting on the ground began to spin and rose rapidly into the air, and this picture was supposedly taken at that moment. The object then emitted light even stronger than the flash, fell back to the ground and became motionless. After the object seemed to stop moving, 14-year-old Hiroshi Mori lifted it off the ground with his bare hands and felt as if something inside it was moving. This photo of him holding the object was allegedly taken at that time, but if it was really night and dark, I don't understand why it is still light in the photo, so it is more likely that this picture was taken at a different time. The boys took the object home and examined it more carefully, and they decided to measure it. The object was 15 to 20 centimeters wide and about 8 to 10 centimeters high and weighed 1 to 1.3 kilograms, depending on the source. 31 holes in a concentric circle at the bottom of the object and 3 patterns around them were discovered, which the boys described as waves or clouds, some kind of flying object, and a shape resembling a flower. Something rattled inside when they shook it, and looking through the holes they discovered components similar to radio electronics, but they didn't see anything that would suggest a drive system of any kind. The boys then took the object to the home of Yasuo Fujimoto, where they showed it to the boy's father, who was a teacher at the local science education center and, according to other sources, the director of the institution. The man only examined the object superficially because he thought the boys were playing a joke on him. He later allegedly regretted not being more thorough. The object was eventually returned to Maury's backpack, where it mysteriously disappeared less than a day later. Over the next 2 weeks, the boys said they saw the same or a similar object flying in the area at least 6 more times, and noticed that it only appeared in dry weather, never when it was raining. They thought it was probably afraid of the water, so they devised a plan accordingly. On the 19th of September, equipped with water and rags, they found the object again, lying motionless in the field. As planned, they covered it with a cloth and poured water on it. But the sources differ here again. One says they ran and waited to see what would happen. Another says they turned the object over and filled it with water through the holes at the bottom, causing it to make a deafening sound like a cicada humming, and even the inside of the object to glow. However, the object remained still, and soon the noise and glowing stopped, so they took with them again. They went to Katsuka Kojima's house, where they plugged cables into the tiny holes and hung the device upside down. Much to their surprise, the dome then slightly separated from the bottom, perhaps due to gravity, and the boys could see the sophisticated electronic equipment inside, as well as an unidentified viscous substance. Later, the boys speculated it may have been the waterlogged remains of the miniature pilot. Although the sequence of the events is not clear, it is certain that the boys tried to smash the object with a hammer on one occasion, but it did not break, and there was not even a scratch. They wanted to heat it up in the oven or freeze it in the fridge, but Kojima's mother, Aiko Katsuka, forbade them to do so. In a later interview, the mother said that she herself had seen the object glow and then fly away after returning home from shopping one evening, which I might add was the umpteenth time it had disappeared. On one occasion, the boys left the UFO in the custody of Seo and Mori, which they covered with pieces of rags. The next day, however, the object was gone again, with nothing under the rag pile. A few hours later, it was found again while playing football, when Mori virtually stumbled into the UFO. This time, they even allegedly marked it with paint, so that if it disappeared and reappeared again, they could be sure it was the same object and not another one just like it. And the 22nd of September was the last day the boys were in contact with the object. During a bike ride together, they took it with them and put it in a bag filled with water, according to some sources, which they tied around the wrist of one of the boys to make sure it would not disappear again. Nothing happened for a while, when the boy, it is not known which of them was looking after it, felt his wrist being tugged with great force. They opened the bag, but were surprised and disappointed to find that the object had disappeared again. In the following days, they expected to see and catch it again, but the strange tiny UFO was never seen again. A few months later, the boys were interviewed by author and later television producer Junichi Yaoi on national radio about their experiments and encounters, which led Mr. Junichi to say that there was no contradiction in the boys' or their parents' accounts. As strange as the story is, it seems to be true. One of the interviews revealed that the case was deliberately hushed up at the time in 1972 because the city government feared that land prices would drop drastically if a UFO alert happened. After this unique case was brought to light again in 2004, thanks to the UFO Comics comic strip, it became so popular in Japan that Shinichiro Namiki, director of the Japan Society of Space Phenomena, finally reopened the investigation in 2007. Kazuo Hayashi, head of the Society's Osaka branch, was tasked with talking to the remaining witnesses, who 35 years later have confirmed what they told and have stuck to their original accounts. During his research, Hayashi came across another story that took place on the evening of the 6th of June, 1976, just 4 years after the Kera incident. Sachiko Oyama, then 9 years old, from Agawa village, was walking in the street looking for her cat when she noticed a small object with a yellow light on it floating in the sky. When the object began to descend past a grove, she approached it. The strange object then struck a tree and, accompanied by a hissing sound, slowly descended to the pavement near the little girl. It looked like a silver hat, and the woman described it during the interview as being exactly the same size as the Kera UFO. She also said that when she touched the object, some kind of viscous substance stuck to her fingers, and she was so frightened that she immediately ran away. When she looked back, she saw the object start to glow yellow and then slowly rise up and almost shoot into the sky, where it disappeared from her sight. The woman, aged 40 in 2007, was still sticking to her story. Hayashi's theory eventually became that these objects were in fact interdimensional vehicles under intelligent control, but whether they had pilots or were self-controlled by some kind of artificial intelligence remains a question. If they had no pilot, they could certainly have been drones, a kind of surveillance device, perhaps coming from a larger extraterrestrial spacecraft nearby, or even from another dimension, who knows for what purpose. But the doubters, who do not dismiss the veracity of the story out of hand, say that they were very much earthly devices, operated by remote control, while ignoring all the features of the object that witnesses have reported. Not to mention that in 1972, the technology was not yet at a level where all these strange features could be achieved, or even the remote control itself was so advanced. And if that were the case, why were the targets children? And who were behind it? What were they observing? Many questions that, of course, they cannot answer. There are a lot of questions, that's for sure, and perhaps we would be no further ahead if the case had not been hushed up in the first place. But now, more than 50 years later, we can only speculate, and the only certainty is that it did happen. So please write in the comments what you think, what your theory is. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please like it. Don't forget to check out my previous videos, because you'll find more interesting stuff on the channel. Thank you very much for your attention. See you in the next video.